Good afternoon, members, and welcome to the first meeting of the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee, and a special welcome to new members. Hopefully you're going to find this interesting. Unfortunately, Councillor McGregor is unable to chair today's meeting due to other commitments, and accordingly I will be chairing today's meeting as my role as Vice Chair. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. Can I please remind you of a few of the arrangements in the guidance note? Microphones switched off, cameras switched off when you're not addressing the meeting. If you wish to contribute to any item, speak in the chat function and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. If your question has been asked already, please withdraw your request so that we can deal with the business a bit quicker. When raising a question, it's helpful if you could give us a page number and that item number. The usual standing order apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by a roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you either to leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or leave in the chat function and then join. And this is required to allow us to record member presence. And please don't use the chat function for any contribution that is material to the debate. So now we go to sediment apologies, and Claire, can you provide those?
Okay, thank you. Just the one apology today being from Councillor McGregor. For the benefit of all those on Teams, we've got 7 members present in the hall, 4 members present on Teams, being Councillors Giusti, Hagman, Ingalls and Young. 3 members currently not present, being Councillors Brodie, McCammon and Mayo.
Approve of members' remote participation. Declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? No. Can we note the minutes of the meeting held on 15th of March 2022? Thank you. Now we move on to the delegation to Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee, item 4, report by Head of Governance and Assurance. Claire is here to assist any members with any questions, and I will open the meeting to debate. This is going well, thank you.
Chair, I think we should just agree our recommendations. Obviously, I've been here before, about 15 years as a councillor on audit and risk. It's always a standard report of starting the new term, so I think I would agree the recommendations and move on.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. So if we're happy to do that, we'll note the remit of the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee as per the recommendations. Thank you. Item 5. Overview the committee's work streams, report by Head of Governance and Assurance. Kevin Geraghty is here to assist if members have any questions. So we'll open up to debate. Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think it's important to note, obviously, that this is the work stream of the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. It would never go amiss, of course, for me to say that most of the scrutiny and the governance should actually happen in committees as well, because sometimes you get questions at this particular committee that should have been asked at the senior committees in the council. So it would not be. No, it wouldn't be remiss of me to say this, because I've said this in the past on several occasions as well, just that scrutiny at the other committees is as important as it is for this committee's work streams.
Thank you, Councillor Dryborough. Is there anyone else with anything they'd like to add? Councillor Bell.
No, I think, Chair, Councillor Driver has made a good point there, but I think we should just agree recommendations anyway and move on.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Well, if it's not remiss of me, I would actually like to ask about recommendation 11, about the arrangements for receiving reports on internal audit work in full and in summary at 6 monthly intervals. What is the benefit of that?
Thank you, Chair. I'll come in on that if with your agreement.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. So traditionally, we have provided internal audit reports to you as they become available. There is sort of two dimensions to this. The first is, do you wish to continue receiving internal audit reports in full? They do vary in quantity, both in quantity and in terms of verbosity. So examples are elsewhere on the agenda. We've got 4 reports for you. Sometimes I sort of worry that members might find that quite a lot to digest in one go. So it is possible. I've always resisted previously any attempt to make me write the report a second time in a more summary form. But I think I need to offer it to you because members may find a summary form more useful. Certainly, I think, based on experience, when the follow-up reports are presented to members, there's a summary there. You don't get the full report again, you get a summary of the report, and members seem to like that and appreciate the highlights from the report rather than the detail of it. So it's an option to say to you, do you wish to continue receiving the reports in full? And also, it is somewhat challenging to dovetail in with the committee meetings sometimes in terms of getting reports ready. So again, in terms of a cycle of presentation, I wondered if the committee would consider whether it wishes to receive them at intervals, say 6 months. And that's the proposal around the follow-up reports, is that you get follow-up reports twice a year, which would encompass all reports previously issued for the last 6 months, rather than sort of ad hoc popping up throughout the year and it being confusing. So the offers are, do you want to receive reports in full, and do you want a structure on that, i.e. 6 monthly, or are you content to receive them as and when they arrive? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. As you probably remember from last session, I'm terrible for scrutinising a lot of the detail behind the reports, and I do think it's important that members get sight of the detail rather than get edited highlights. But I don't know if there's anyone else who's got perhaps reflection of my background, because I've got an accountancy background. I do quite appreciate that. Councillor Dryborough.
Yeah, well, I would agree, Chair. It's useful to get a detailed report as and when they come. But I think Kevin, has said that having a summary of those is good to check up on. Basically, I mean, there will be a list of reports that have happened in the previous 5 years that we'll be getting another update, I would imagine, Kevin, over the next 5 years on coming back. So I'm quite happy to get the full summary as and when they come. But I know that there's a bit of an issue with resources in the internal audit situation. So I'm happy to get as and when, and I don't think we would need a 6 monthly update if we get an as and when. So it's an as and when for me.
Thank you, Councillor Driver. That's very much my view as well. So if there's general agreement on that particular. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. Just to agree with what's been said, I would prefer the full report, especially if a summary report is going to cost extra work. I would prefer to see the full report anyway for proper scrutiny, and I'm happy with as and when they're ready. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. So I think we will just go to the recommendations if there's no any further. Oh, Councillor McCammon.
Apologies, Chair. I was just apologising for the lateness. I'd had connection issues.
Thank you. That's fine. So if we just go to the recommendations. Note the summary of Local Authorities Audit Committee's function is defined by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. I think within the noting things, can we just do all these en bloc? We just go straight. Yeah, exactly. So we'll just move to note them. 1 to 10, then agree the arrangements for receiving the reports on the existing method of full reports as and when. Agree to continue to receive a report and presentation on one risk from the council-wide risk register to each meeting of the committee, as per paragraph 3.6.2. And 13, agree to identify the requirements, if any, for further member learning on risk management, as per paragraph 3.6.4. Come in, Councillor Driver.
Just on that particular recommendation, Chair, I just wonder if Kevin can maybe make some suggestions as to, you know, what, if there is anything that members would, you know, possibly benefit from.
I think Vlad's wanting to come in on this, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just through you, in terms of risk management, and I'll also bring in Kevin just for his view. We did have a seminar previously for members, and it's whether that was found useful for those members that were there, and if so, then I think we would probably look to replicate something similar, again bearing in mind new council, new members, so it's whether that's something that is of interest, and then we can have that bigger discussion in terms of what exactly you want to identify within that, that we can ensure we tailor the seminar accordingly. So risk management obviously comes through here as well in terms of just that overview for audit, risk and scrutiny, but we're quite happy either way. It's just what members want. I would suggest it might be worthwhile having it, but it's up to members to decide whether that's something they want. I don't know if Kevin wants to add to that.
No, thanks for that, Vlad. I think more and more throughout in service committees as well, you know, risk is becoming an important part of the consideration for all members. So, Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Chair. I think the name of this committee, you know, Audit, Risk and Scrutiny, is really telling. And I think to do the job properly, you need to know your subject. If not inside out, know a bit more about it. I'd certainly be in favour of a seminar, although I'm quite familiar with the concepts, and also some additional information perhaps for new members on health and safety, which isn't something that everybody knows a great deal about. Not massive amounts of information. Also RIPSA, which again I get from the papers we don't utilise a great deal, but many folk won't be familiar with that. Thanks, Chair.
So I take from that going forward, you know, member training is very important, and you're right. You know, the clues in the name: audit, risk, and scrutiny. You know, I'm well aware of that, but again, like I say, I think it's something that, you know, shouldn't just be open to members of this committee. I think it's something that should be open to all members. Is basically what I'm saying. So we're happy to agree to identify the requirements for any further member learning on risk management? Yes, thank you. So now we move on to item 6, Health and Safety Progress Report by Head of People and Transformation. Mike Shepley, Stuart Clanahan and Sue Hawken-Pethick are here to assist if members have any questions. I'll open up to debate.
Has Sue changed their name?
It's still me, yes.
When did you
Gone
get
back
married?
to my maiden name. No, it's the reverse actually. Gone back to my maiden name.
Councillor Driver.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the corporate health and safety end of year report, and obviously there's a few which have said that previously these would have been put on hold because of COVID, and I'm just wondering where we are with the on hold actions, especially in the incident reduction strategy action plan, the percentage of corporate health and safety audits completed as per corporate requirements, and obviously important for us is the review of the corporate health and safety plan itself.
Hiya. Yeah, you will note. Yes, you will note from the report that from the year previously that 10 were on target, and we've increased it now up to 16 on target, with a further 5 were on hold and now restarted. The 3 areas that you mentioned, yes, very much so, are the ones that we've just restarted on. The audits, we previously, before COVID, we did have a full health and safety management full review audit programme, and that was on hold. But in the interim, what we have been doing is basically targeting specific risk areas where we've critically needed to. And of course, we've done quite a lot of monitoring, reviewing and audits on COVID related activities as well. Regarding the incident reduction strategy, this is a proactive working group. We're looking at setting up a strategic health and safety forum to take matters forward going forward, for being proactive in our initiatives, as you know, rather than during that business as usual stuff. But the additional items we've had to concentrate on the priority critical risk areas, rather than being proactive on additional development areas such as the incident reduction strategy. But as I say, this will be taken forward to the new proposed health and safety strategic forum going forward. And the corporate health and safety plan, just as we speak, we are actually updating the council health and safety policy, and with light of the new chief executive coming and our latest structural changes, we are actually just developing that at the moment, and the natural follow-on will be the actual new plan. So it is literally, we've started development on that as we speak, and that will be submitted to a future service committee for endorsement.
Thank you, Sue. Are you happy enough with that, Archie? Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone else? Now, Councillor Hagman first, and then we'll let you back in, Councillor Driver.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks for the report before us. I'm looking at Table 1 on page 24. And obviously you've made reference to it there, Sue, in your response to Councillor Driver, but I think it is a welcome move. Things are progressing and we're actually in a much better position this past year than we were in the previous years. So I think that needs to be noted, and, you know, thanks for staff for taking that forward. I'm looking specifically at the appendix, and it makes reference to the percentage of elected members who have undertaken health and safety responsibility training. Now, my understanding was that this was mandatory training, and certainly in the past council term, all elected members were encouraged to do so. Now, I did attend the first part of the training in late May, but it was a very different type of training to what the training I received previously. So I'm just actually looking for clarification. Will there be a further rollout of mandatory health and safety training for elected members, or was that overview that we received as part of our induction counting towards it? And is it mandatory, and how will we ensure? Because I think, you know, it's very easy to sort of overlook health and safety matters, but I think it is absolutely crucial, and there was a reason it was mandatory. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, the actual figure there was from the Constitution up until the new members came on board, and that was the actual position at that point. And it was a far more in-depth health and safety training to the members that were on board. The training that was delivered just in May there was more induction awareness training. And I note from earlier discussion on the report before that it had been flagged about training. So, and I very much welcome additional training to what you've already had been received, in particularly with the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee, to raise awareness on the health and safety legislative role, and a practical guidance for you. And whether it's mandatory, it's not for me to determine, but open to, and certainly promote and encourage it.
Thank you for that. That's helpful.
I remember in the last session that there was a bit of difficulty for a lot of members, and it's the same with a lot of training courses, to get people all in the one place or online at the same time. And Is a lot of this training available online? Because I know in other organisations I'm involved in, there's an awful lot of online training and assessment done, and it does make it a lot easier for people to do it. It was the same with the pensions committee as well, because the major part of that was online, and you got your little exam at the end of it. So is this sort of stuff available online?
Yeah, it's certainly an area that we're exploring. And like, for example, for Managing Safely, we've done Managing Safely refreshers just delivered on there back in November, which we hadn't done before. So we are certainly looking at expanding that area. I mean, because there's an action at this committee from the previous session regarding to get feedback about what training you would like. I'm very much happy to be part of those conversations, and we can do that blended, on a blended way.
Thank you, Sue. I do think it makes it a lot easier for people to get involved, and I think that's a good way forward. And if we don't have anyone else, come back, Councillor Driver. Sorry, I forgot about you.
It's easy for people to forget me, Chair. I just sort of blend into the background, and that's fine. Yeah, I remember last time. Was IOSH for elected members? Was that the course that was done at the start of the last term, which was I think it was a 4-hour course, if I remember right, for elected members. I just wanted to talk about the health and well-being side of things. I noticed that Stuart's on the line, and I missed the last update, Stuart. So I'm just wondering where we are with the health and well-being group, and what's the move forward on that.
Would you like to come in, Stuart?
Thank you, Chair, and yeah, thank you, Councillor Dryborough. Yes, good update. We had a very recent discussion bringing the group together, as you know, through the work that you had been involved in previously. It's a very active group. There's lots of action, lots of activity across a number of themes, some of which merges into health and safety, hence why there's a bit of an update in the report today. But essentially, we have and always have done through COVID, before COVID and after COVID, always had a really detailed programme about how we support our workforce, how we can support their families, whether it's physical, mental or financial well-being. And a very recent update to that was a very important discussion with the group, the strategic group, around some of the financial well-being challenges that are particularly prevalent just now across the country, and what we can do as an employer to help our staff more than we currently do. So very, very good discussions, clear actions about what we're going to do in terms of provide support, link in with agencies, signpost staff, look at the best way that we can from a mental health perspective. So there's a real focus on that financial well-being at the moment, and that's one of the really good things about our group, that it can adapt to what is happening out there in our communities at the moment. We also manage, as you know, and other members may not know, the Healthy Working Lives programme, which is a national programme, and that is currently being reviewed. Now, this council is a Gold Employer Award, and that was never something that was important to us. But what that Gold Award stood for was that we had very comprehensive policies and procedures and building a culture of well-being. And that was demonstrated to the assessors that come into the council to say, what are you doing to help your workforce and their families? And that was evidence sufficiently enough that we were deemed to be, up there at a level that was recognised positively. So Scottish Government are reviewing that Healthy Working Lives Gold Award, and that will likely change in 2022, linking much closer to the Fairer Scotland principles, which seems logical and sensible. And we will adapt our programme through the strategic group to make sure that we continue the momentum and that we don't rest on our laurels. And one of the other, I think, aspects as well is that whilst we have had elected member representation in the group, it hasn't been in an official champion capacity, but I think that will change through this council. And we certainly look forward to you know, the member representation on that group who will have official champion responsibilities. And again, that will help us and lever the work that we do, not only across the workforce, but obviously into our political leadership, so that we can get that feedback and embed that into the work in the programme that we're doing going forward.
Thank you, Stuart. And you want to come back in, Art?
Yeah, thanks for that, Stuart. I'm pleased to see you're doing quite a bit of work on the financial side of things. I think the cost of living crisis does have an effect on everybody's health going forward, health and well-being going forward as well. If you're worrying about where the next lunch is going to come for, you're going to affect the way you actually work as well. So pleased to be hearing that, and we'll keep involved in an unofficial capacity if you know, the champion side of things doesn't happen.
Thank you, Councillor Drybrough. Councillor Young.
Hey, thanks, Chair. Going back to the tables on page 27, table 3, number of instances, and then it says number of absences due to work-related stress. It doesn't really give any indication of the length of these absences. Is that days, weeks, or what happens if a person feels stressed enough they're off 2 or 3 times in a year? So can I have a wee bit of clarity on what an absence actually refers to? Is it days, or is it just one specific incident with one person? Thank you.
Do you want to come back in on that, Stuart? Is that for you?
Yeah, happy. Yes, happy to do that. And you know, an instance can be as little as a day, and it could be obviously much longer. And it's where we recognise that there's an open and close of that particular absence. So that would be how we would define that. Thank you.
Can I come back to you?
Yes, Councillor Young, come back.
So if a person has a lengthy absence of a period of months, that would only be classed as a single incident. And could I ask what the average length of time passes before a case is closed, if I could use that phraseology? Thank you.
Can you answer that, Stuart?
I can certainly answer the first part of it. So yes, one continuous period of absence with no breaks or no return to work, that would be classified as one instance, whether it's 1 day or 30 working days. In terms of the average number of days, then you know, we can look at that. We obviously have within the table the number of days lost. It would be relatively easy just with a calculation to work out what the average would be across the number of staff and the number of instances involved. So that wouldn't be necessarily a difficult calculation to make. I think one of the things that's really important to the organisation is that work-related stress is within our gift to resolve as quickly as possible. So notwithstanding the information that's presented to you, in some of those cases will be very complex and other cases will be much less complex to resolve. However, one of the paragraphs, I think, notes some of the really good work that we put forward in 2021 with our joint trade union colleagues, who we work very closely on health and safety, health and wellbeing matters. We simplified that process, Councillor Young. We simplified the language with only one aim, and that was to get people around the table to have those very, very important conversations happening earlier than perhaps they would have done in the past. And so far, and we're only 6 months into when we put that process in place, we're hearing some very, very good feedback from people who do need that support, do need that help, and they're reacting positively to the work that we're doing, not only as officers, but with our joint trade unions.
Councillor Young, are you happy with that response?
Yes, very happy, a very full response. But I wonder if members of the committee could get that further information over the average length of, let's call it, an incident per employee. Thank you.
Stuart, are you happy to provide that? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Well, if there's no further contributions, we'd just like to move to the recommendations, and we've reviewed numbers 1 to 3, so I think we managed to achieve that. So we'll now move on to item 7, membership of the Joint Safety Committee. This report is to review the Council representation of the Joint Safety Committee And we are asked to nominate 6 members to the Joint Safety Committee as detailed at paragraph 3.4. Is there anyone who would like to make any contributions? I know at the moment we have, I think, Councillor Wilson and Councillor Lowe have put their names forward for the Joint Safety Committee. So I'll open it up to everyone else. I'm looking at you, Councillor Driver.
Yeah, you know how you get to that stage in your bottle of life where you're hitting the sort of top edge, and if you add another 1 or 2 things, you're going to overflow. I'm getting to that side. If other members would like to join, that's fine. You know, I'm happy to support if there is any other members available.
So, do we have anyone else who would be prepared to take on that role? Given the reluctance in the room, and over to Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come in and hopefully it's helpful that, particularly for those members that maybe haven't experienced the Joint Safety Committee, I think one or two points that might be helpful in their consideration is that obviously there's a clear link between the health and safety issues that are raised through the Joint Safety Committee and then the reporting cycle that's presented to Audit, Risk and Scrutiny. It also provides continuity and builds knowledge for members, and there was a comment made earlier around training, which is really important. And you know, for us, there's an exciting journey ahead in terms of the new health and safety arrangements, and we certainly look forward to working with members and joint trade union colleagues. So building that knowledge through the Joint Safety Committee is really valuable, and that translates into the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny environment. And then also it gives members that knowledge and that access to joint trade union members round the table, where you can hear not only from officers, but you get to hear from the trade unions as well. And obviously Councillor Dryborough has in particular has had some time on that committee in the past, and I'm sure he can certainly advocate for some of the really positive and also challenging discussions that we have at that. But that's what it's about. It's about improving practice and improving safety practice across the organisation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your sales pitch there, Stuart. So, Sue, would you like to come in?
Yeah, it's just in the past, the chair of Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee has always sat on the Joint Safety Committee, and I'm not sure if Gal would be amenable to that.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't actually speak for Gail. I would have thought that as chair of this committee, and I was about to say prior to Stuart's sales pitch as vice chair, I'm happy to put myself forward as well. So, but so that takes us up to 3 at the moment, which is what we need. And I think we can take these discussions throughout our groups and see if we can fill the post if people are happy with that going forward. So I think we'll just have to leave it at that for the moment. So, Councillor Driver.
Yeah, just to clarify a point, is it 6 members from the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny, or is it 6 members from members?
My understanding is it's 6 members from Audit, Risk and Scrutiny. Can someone verify that for me? Yeah, Sue?
Yes, the membership and constitution of Joint Safety Committee does actually say in the constitution it's 6 members from this committee in its current constitution. Yes.
Right. Thank you, Sue. I keep giving hard stares to Councillor Dryborough to see if we can persuade him to come out of retirement from.
I go in.
Thank you. Andrew Gusty, Councillor Gusty.
Yeah, I'll volunteer my name for the Joint Safety Committee if we can't get anyone else.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think that just leaves us with requiring 1 more. So I'm sure we can manage that in our groups. I think we need an independent member. Yeah, really. We don't have anyone here, I don't think, do we? Is anyone online? Independent? Right, well, we'll have to just leave that at that for the moment. So at least we've got 5 people going forward. So we've agreed to nominate 5 members, but we'll be working on getting number 6. So now we move on to item 8, annual government statement. Vlad, Valente and Claire are here to assist with any members with any questions. We're asked to agree the draft annual government statement and delegate to the head of governance and assurance to make any amendments in order to finalise the government statement prior to its inclusion in the final accounts. And I know there is a wee error in the report somewhere, so I've asked Vlad to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and through you, in paragraph 311, which we also note there's a typo, there's 2 311s, so it should be 311 312. Under 311, it states specifically that the final accounts, including the final version of the annual governance statement, will be reported to full council on the 29th of September 2022. That should, in fact, be will be reported to Audit, Risk and Scrutiny on the 27th of September 2022 rather than full council. That's in line with our accounting practice in regards to the accounts and the annual governance statement. So it's an error, it's been replicated. We've noticed this through a couple of reports. So it's just to correct that so that members are fully cited on the reporting process for it, which in essence it comes back here, and those final accounts will of course be provided to elected members at that point in time.
Thank you, Vlad. Is anyone would like to ask anything? Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Vlad, for the report. I mean, there's an awful lot of information in here. It covers a vast amount of work. So thank you again to officers for pulling it all together. It's more really for a small bit of information that I'm looking for, and that's in terms of when I look at the appendix on page 45, and it makes reference of the establishment of the integrity group. Now, there's various lines there of what the remit of the integrity group is, and part of that is to monitor and review the council's anti-fraud and anti-corruption policy. Clearly, you know, there was a lot of work done this past few years on this very issue, and on page 53, it does make reference that we agreed the strategy at full council in March 2022. However, it doesn't make any reference, and it's just really for information, how often does the integrity group actually meet? Because I can't see any information on here, and it maybe shouldn't be here, but it's just really for my own information, please. Thank you.
Vlad, do you want to come in?
Yeah, through you, Chair. And apologies, I don't have the exact number of meetings that we've got, but I think it's on a quarterly basis, but I'll check that and send that response to members. What I would highlight in terms of the integrity group, as you may recall, the integrity group was here prior to that particular review of the policy and statement. We've carried out a full-out review of that, and we have revamped not only the membership but also the policy itself, the statement, and we have circulated that and got approval from CMT. So we are in a much better place, I would think, now in terms of that integrity group. We are meeting regularly. I think it is on a quarterly basis, and I don't know if Jackie was going to come in on that, but I'll confirm that and relay that to members after this meeting.
Thank you, Vlad. Are you happy with that, Councillor Hagman?
Yeah, no, that's useful. Vlad, if you could also confirm who sits on that, that would also be really helpful, just so members are fully aware of who's got overall sight of that. Thank you.
Vlad?
Yeah, what we'll do as an action through you, Chair, is we'll circulate the policy and statement, which includes the terms of reference and exactly who is included within that membership.
Thank you, Vlad. That would be very helpful. Councillor Young?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vlad, for this very comprehensive report. I'm looking at page 58, 3.20, enhancing the accountability of service and effectiveness of the other public sector providers, looking in particular at the integrated joint board. What you say in your report, to my mind, I can't find fault with. Our full Council and Social Work Committee has considered reports. From a personal point of view, I find it very difficult to get actual specific information on, say, how both our in-house home care department and independent home care providers are successfully providing care throughout the region. You know, several years ago, we used to get quite detailed information about delivery of care within our own wards. That seems to have fallen right away, and perhaps it's something we need to look at, how we can better receive information on the service that's being provided. But perhaps that's for later in the agenda papers. Perhaps we could have a look at this under the plan, the future plan, under item 11 later on in the papers. Thank you. Just a comment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Young. Is there anyone else like to come in? In which case, we'll move on to the recommendations. So we're asked to 2.1, agree the draft annual governance statement. We're happy to agree. 2, delegate to the head of governance and assurance to make any amendments in order to finalise the annual governance statement prior to inclusion in the final audit accounts. We're happy to do that. Now we move on to item number 9, internal audit reports issued, report by Head of Governance and Assurance. We've got 4 audit reports here, and you're asked to note and comment on these, and I would propose to basically go through them one at a time. And we've got Kevin Geraghty here to assist members if there are any questions. I'll open up the meeting to member debate, and we'll start with the main financial systems, sundry debtors, if anyone has any comments or questions about that. Councillor Drybrook.
Yeah, I read this one pretty carefully, Chair, because it's been up a couple of times before that I've been an audit and risk. The conclusions is really important to me, and that the Central Ledger section has a very good working knowledge of the processes involved, and based on that audit, no significant control weaknesses were identified during the course of the audit. So, pretty pleased with that, Chair, and because there used to be some issues with this particular thing, and it seems to have any actions that have come forward from the Audit and Risk Committee previously, it seems to have worked.
Thank you, Councillor Drybrough. The only question I potentially had, and it actually applies to a number of these audits, is it's actually in relation to record retention. We refer to spreadsheets and working papers and things, and is there any way we can ensure that these things are securely kept in case we need to revisit it in the future? Kevin.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the question of records management, of course, has a significant bearing on internal audit. To use the joke I've used before, I apologise for repeating it. Our job is to look back in anger, haha. So, you know, if records disappear or more difficult to gain access to, what we do as part of our work is we look at, if you like, the flow of work as it's happening. So certain reports are produced to allow, and checklists are maintained and these sorts of things. Now, we look for that as part of our work, and we use that to gain assurance. The kind of principle of internal auditing is if there are good controls in place, you look for the operation of those controls for your assurance. If the controls are weak, you re-perform transactions to make sure that they're coherent and make sense. That's called substantive testing. Sorry if I sound like I'm teaching going to suck eggs. But records are very important as part of that. Now, generally speaking, we have few problems with records, but we are aware that control and management of records can be very challenging for some services. Some services went down the route of having online information systems. So, for example, our colleagues in revenues went on to that system some years ago, and all of a customer's records are accessible through that, which is pretty good. In fact, to the point when, and this is an aside, so I apologise if I'm annoying anybody when I say this, to the point when they were so good at keeping records, they were in fact exceeding record retention policies, and we asked them to clean out those records and make sure that they weren't keeping records excessively. So it kind of horses for courses. It depends on system and process. A lot of what is produced for operational purposes does not need to be retained long term. So as long as it's there for audit purposes and we can carry out our checks and gain our assurances, but basically they don't need to be kept for long periods of time. So generally speaking, 3 years is a sort of typical cycle. For some records, it can be 6 or 7, but archive storage and these sorts of things can be challenging issues as well, and retaining information beyond necessity is also an issue in relation to data protection. So if I had a problem in any of these audits, or if I do indeed have a problem in future audits with a lack of access to records, that will get reported in as a challenge, if you like, for the service to make sure that something can be audited by retaining appropriate records. But it's well understood and well established, and certainly for our work, we have not experienced significant issues in relation to records management. I hope that's reassuring, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. It's always useful when you have, particularly, I've asked this question repeatedly about spreadsheets, and is there a better way of doing things with a bit more security? But I take what you're saying, and I'm quite happy with that. If there's no one else wanting to ask any questions on that particular report, we'll move on to non-domestic rates. Councillor Drybrook.
Yeah, Chair, and this one, when you look at 1.3 of the start, and as at 31st of March 2022, 95.9% of the rates due for the year had been collected, is actually quite a good process, especially after the last couple of years that we've actually had. I would imagine that with the softer applications that this report is actually going to be doing, that will get up to the 97-98% mark over the next couple of months. So it's just to say well done to those in non-domestic rates for taking that forward. Kevin, I'm just wondering in the last page of the report with regards the production of the checks is being undertaken by staff independent of the refund process, talking about purchase ledger systems and things like that. And a control document is completed listing the first and last cheque numbers used. Local taxation officer sign a logbook confirming collection of the cheques. And it's probably coming back to what the Chair said earlier on about, getting that data, where do you store that data and things like that. It says that you reviewed the refund output for 3 weeks along with the logbooks and no issues were identified. Do you see a weakness in that particular system?
Kevin, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. No, we don't. The part of the problem is that, if you like, refunds are exceptional but necessitous. It is appropriate to make refunds. It's kind of not a natural, the natural rhythm of the system is to take money off people, not to give it back to them. If we're giving it back to them, we give it through rebates and so on in terms of their billing. So the focus of the system is about billing, and sort of actually paying money back to people is a bit tricky. So it's kind of a bit of it doesn't necessarily sit comfortably as a process in total. But the process itself as operated is controlled. The obvious, sorry to be blunt, the obvious sort of concern, risk here is that people are given what are tagged as refunds inappropriately, either through fraud or something of that kind. So the process for refunds needs to be fairly buttoned down, and it is, and that's really what we're trying to say in this. So no, I don't have any concerns about it.
Thank you.
Happy with that, Councillor Drybrook? Thank you. And I don't think there's anyone else with anything to say on that one, so we'll move on to Treasury Management, which is Appendix 3. Anybody with any questions on that? No. And the only comment I would make on that, again, as it comes back to the conclusion, or the management response, they're broadly in agreement with the findings. So what bits are they not in agreement with?
Yes, that's a. I thought you might pick up on that one. Yeah, I'd have liked a very fulsome acceptance of the report, but there was a reservation on it. I think it's one of these situations where, best characterised as saying, I don't disagree. If you take the nuances of what that means, well, what do you mean you don't disagree? How could you disagree? So it's I think it is a I don't disagree type response. But it's just, I think there was an element of reluctance here that this team is kind of under a lot of pressure, and they had a great deal to deal with, and they've done it well. And that's what we kind of tried to make the reports say. Within that, there are always risks associated with Treasury management, so it needs to be given a lot of attention and a lot of care, which means they're kind of under a bit of scrutiny on an ongoing basis. So I think, it's possible for internal auditors to pitch up and appear to be being critical about things which the people doing the work kind of feel a bit aggrieved about because they've done a damn good job, and they'd rather have very fulsome praise than not. But, we think this is a balanced report. We think it's fair. We've highlighted a couple of issues where management agree with us effectively and said, yes, we're going to look at that. So I think it's a fair and balanced report. I'm quite sure, just as I would have wished a slightly more fulsome response, they probably would have wished a slightly more enthusiastic sign-off by internal audit. So it's that kind of situation. At least I hope that's the case. I'm not aware of anything else, Chair, that would give me any concern about that kind of response.
Thank you, Kevin. There's nobody online wanting to come in and no one in the room, so thank you for that one. We'll now move on to the final report on banking, Appendix 4. Has anybody got anything to ask about that? Again, you're just going to get me by the sounds of it, Kevin, unfortunately, but I am, or was, and I'm still surprised sometimes the length of time between bank reconciliations, but my own personal experience is the longer you leave it, the harder it is to do. But do you think there is any element of a risk with that, or is it just standard practice and it works?
It works, but it ain't very pretty, I suppose. And as an auditor, I tend to, I'm of the same mind as you, which is, look, I want reconciliations lined up, standing to attention, all done on time, ticked off. That's core stuff. With the complexity of the council's operations and its bank accounts and the range of uses some of them are put to, it makes it challenging sometimes. Now, Finance's position here is that actually they are reconciled appropriately. That doesn't necessarily fit with my view of when reconciliations should be done and how often. So we have a slight difference of opinion. What we do have is a recognition that, yes, there's going to be reviews taking place here, perhaps rationalisation of bank accounts. I've tried to communicate that actually by having a lot of bank accounts, you can distribute the sort of work a bit, but the downside, and that makes it therefore more likely to be done, more deliverable, more likely to be achieved on a regular basis. But the disadvantage with distributing it is nothing gets that much love and attention. So in other words, it's sort of routinized, whereas I would like to see, personally, I'd like to see much more structure behind a reconciliation approach. So, but that's, it's for management. At the end of the day, management have made the call on the use of resources, and it's appropriate that they do so, and it's for them to do so. So I'm saying we've got quite a complicated picture on bank accounts. Could we do something with it? And effectively, they're saying we'll have a look at it as part of what we're doing going forward. And we might or might not continue it. We might continue with this number of bank accounts and so on. But I am conscious that it's a bit of an ask of them in terms of saying, well, if you reduce the number of bank accounts and simplify it, then you are going to have to put more resource into a structured reconciliation. Now, that to me is a good thing as person interested in control. Operationally, that's not nearly a good thing. It means a demand for resources that can't be supported just at the minute. So it's horses for courses, as they say. Where does the risk sit? It is small. We have some very good people who are quite alert and who in the past certainly have picked up oddities in our bank accounts and had them looked at. But we've also had a situation long in the past where a transaction was odd but wasn't looked at for some time. And in today's modern environment, you need to respond very, very quickly to any anomalies in your banking, because you can lose money very, very quickly and not get it back through if you're not careful. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Young, you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Probably a very small point. I'm on page 96, transferring money between accounts. I note that in the findings that the internal transfers require an email authorisation from a more senior person, but for an external, I'm wondering if that also requires an email authorisation, which can be kept, because the statement implies just a nod of the head would be good enough. I'm hoping it would be a more permanent note of an authorisation.
Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to answer that. Yes, for an internal transfer, it is an email authorisation. For an external transfer, it's a two-person process. So any money leaving the council's bank accounts has to have an authorisation on it within the system, within the COBS system. So that's why it's not referenced there saying it has to have an email authorisation. Effectively, a specific authorisation is given to a transfer away from the council's bank accounts as part of the transaction. For an internal, it's done, but it's done only in relation to an authorising memo or email having been sent first. So the standard is there and is maintained. There's no concern about that.
You happy with that, Councillor Young? Yeah.
I'm happy with that reassurance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, if there's no further contributions, I think we can... Oh, Councillor Durward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's an observation on Appendix 1, Appendix 3, Appendix 4, under control frameworks, point 2.2 in each appendix. Effective administration of any council system relies on the employment of well-trained and competent staff. Totally agree with that. As part of this review, internal audit has considered any quality assurance arrangements in place. It has not, however, specifically reviewed recruitment procedures, training arrangements, or the use of performance and development reviews, which kind of flies in the face of the original sentence. Can I ask why that hasn't been done? Is it an issue of time? Is it an issue of resourcing? Because I think it's quite important. Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you. We shy away from looking at PDRs. PDRs are obviously an important aspect of performance maintenance, but they are personal. So we do shy away from looking at, you know, what has been said to an individual or what's been agreed between an individual and their management about their personal performance. We kind of do that. Training, yes, actually, we say training in there, but we do actually consider training, particularly around any new system or any change in system. What we look at is what training has been provided, what facilities are available, what information and guidance is available to staff, because one of our considerations is, you know, do staff has access to the correct instructions and so on to be able to operate the system and to do it. It's a bit of a, I think it's a good point. I think that has become a bit stock in our audit reports. So, you know, as based on that comment, I will take it away and have a look at the wording of that and see if we can be clear about what we mean by that, and not just stick it in every report we produce without sort of thinking about it more carefully. So yes, I'm happy to take that away and review that particular section in our audit reports going forward.
Would you like to come back, Councillor Dorward?
Thank you, Chair. I think the key point for me is competence. So it would be, you know, for me, it would be reassuring to know that this, I'm not suggesting they're not, but the staff involved in these processes are competent to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. In my view, with this, I fully understand what Kevin's saying, that it's concentrating primarily on systems and controls, and that is a key part of it as well as the competence of the staff. But that, again, that probably comes down to the line management as much as anything else. So, but if we've got no one else wanting to come in, I think we can happily say that we've looked at these and noted and discussed. Thank you. I'd like to move on to item 10, which is the and annual internal audit controls assurance statement, report by head of governance and assurance. Kevin
Chair,
again,
can I just
still
come
here.
in?
No, come back, Councillor Driver.
On that particular agenda item, I don't know what it says because it was really weird.
Vlad.
Yeah, we've identified, this is twice it's happened, I've asked for the printing unit to be scanning these to make sure it doesn't happen again, so I'll take that away, Chair, just through you in terms of an action, just to make sure that we quality check these, so my sincere apologies for this having happened again. I was given assurance that that wouldn't happen, but obviously from a printing perspective, that's the case. The published ones, which are both online and members have access to, are correct. There seems to be some form of technical issue in terms of migrating it to a printing scenario, so we'll look behind that and make sure that members get the right printed version.
Thank you, Vlad. I had the same when I opened the papers and had a look at it. Oh, what's going on here? But and the way my mind works as well, I was trying to figure out what the possible problem could be, and I couldn't find a pattern to it either. But anyway, that's just a bit. I'm probably saying too much here. So we're asked to note the internal audit controls assurance statement appendix, which gives a positive assurance of the council control arrangements. So anyone with anything other than that to mention about it? No. There's no one online, so it looks like we've noted that. So we'll now move on to item number 11. The Audit Plan 22 to 23, report by Head of Governance Assurance. Kevin's still here to take questions. We're asked to note the internal audit charter and agree the internal audit plan. Is there anyone with anything they would like to ask about this? Councillor Driver.
Yeah, it just comes back to what I was saying about the resources within internal audit. And Kevin, it's one I've asked you before, is do you have enough time and resource to actually carry out the plan as suggested?
Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, somewhere, I'm just trying to find it, sorry. I should be making a statement to you that I have adequate resources to carry out core assurance. So that's the production, you know, if you like, our purpose as a minimum is to produce an annual controls assurance statement. I need to have the resources to be able to do enough work to support a conclusion being reached. And if I don't have enough resources to do that, I have to tell you about it. So somewhere I've said, yes, I do. This plan represents, it's cut around what resources I've got. So it comes down to, we've moved forward, I'm pleased to say. In the last couple of years, we've had some difficulties and we've been kind of confined to a narrower frame of work sitting around that controls assurance statement. So for this year, I'm pleased to be able to report that actually we can still do the controls assurance statement work, plus a little bit more, which is quite good. So yes, I'm very hopeful. I've explained in the plan, we'll do the main financial systems work as outlined, but also we're looking to try and do maybe 3 other audits away from main financial systems work, which sort of takes us back to the more old style pattern of what internal audit was offering. What we haven't done is given you details of what they are, because there's still some discussion going on about them. One of them will be on procurement, for sure. The exact content of that is not been defined at the moment, but one of them will definitely be around procurement. So I'll be doing a piece of work around procurement this year. And I do have enough resources to deliver what's in this plan as of today's date. Providing nothing goes winky-wonky after today, it should be possible to deliver this plan with a reasonable degree of certainty. Say, I protect the core assurance work because that's the absolute priority, but it can become a bit dry if that's all you ever do. So I'm looking very much to expand and give us some additional work this year. And hopefully we'll have some interesting things to report back to members in the next 12 months or so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. Does that reassure you? Will you be able to sleep tonight, Councillor Driver?
Oh, I'm sure I'll be able to sleep tonight here, and it fills me with confidence when I get winky-wonky answers as well. You know?
Thank you. Councillor Hagman?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Kevin. If you have in part sort of answered my question that I was going to raise, and that was about 3.2.6, which is the internal audit plan ahead. I'm aware in the past that members have been asked to provide feedback and direction for what we would like, and I'm very aware that at the last committee there were several suggestions put forward which seem to have disappeared. They weren't noted actually in the minute, which is probably an error on my part. I should maybe ask the question at the start of the meeting. And you have said there that there's space potentially for a further 3, procurement being 1. Will there be opportunities for elected members to say, we would like to see some internal audit done on X, Y, and Z? You know, because I think it's really important that members are both mindful of the resources, and as you said, I am very aware that there's that core assurance work that you need to do, but we also need to be confident that if members are asking for some internal audit work to be done, that can actually be taken forward. So it's maybe not for you to answer that one, Kevin. I don't know. It's maybe it does all come down to resources, which ultimately is in the hands of the members. But it would be really interesting to just hear a response. Thank you.
Kevin.
Chair, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hagman. It's a good question, one that we've kind of looked at before. So I'll put the sort of extreme position first, which is to say, I professionally, it would be very difficult for me if members directed internal audit resources. It's meant to be my judgment of what risks are, and I'm meant to carry out sufficient and appropriate work and manage, serve management needs and members' needs as well. So what I've always said is that the way to achieve this, which I totally respect and in fact indeed welcome members' input to, is through your discussions at committee about what your concerns are. So we have had in the past members expressing concerns during discussions at the committee which have led to specific pieces of internal audit work being done. So now it might sound semantics, which it is a bit, to say, well, is that you directing internal audit work or not? No, it's not. It's me responding to your concerns. So effectively, my responsibility is to listen to what you're saying, to discuss that with you. Some of your concerns are not best addressed by internal audit work. And some of them are best addressed through other mechanisms. You also have the ability to call for reports from officers on matters of concern to you. So you actually have the ability to obtain information and insight into things away from internal audit. So internal audit is about assurance, and it is a sort of a bit of a structured approach to things, which to some extent both it creates opportunity and limits it. So I think we need to go forward together on this, and I think I'm very interested. I wasn't at the last committee, so I'm very interested if suggestions or topics are emerging from discussion at the committee's meetings. I'm very interested in what they are, because I can factor those into future plans, future work opportunities, indeed maybe amend existing work streams or projects to try and accommodate some of those concerns where they are. Because my job is to provide you with assurance, and that assurance, this committee having assurance and confidence, is a very important function indeed for the council as a whole. So yeah, I want to be influenced you, but I don't want to be directed by you, is putting it in summary. So I hope that's not too cheeky, Chair, and I hope that helps with the thinking that might be taking.
A very impressively nuanced answer, if you don't mind me saying, Kevin. But
yeah,
thank
you, Chair. Yes, no, I was going to say exactly that. It was a really good answer. So thank you, Kevin, for that fulsome response. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Yeah,
Councillor Young, come in.
Thank you. Again, it's about resources. I note in 3.2 3.2.10 on page 108, there's concern expressed that the internal audit does not have resources to carry out an advanced computer audit work. And obviously with the council being so reliant now on our digital aspects, has Kevin any concerns that we are unable to internally?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a good question. I have to make that declaration to you each year so that you're fully informed that I'm not doing what I now characterise as advanced computer work. We do cover aspects of computer systems and processes, obviously, as part of our main financial reviews. So things like password control, accesses, archiving, resilience, those are all used to be part of computer auditing. We do those as part of what we do. What I'm talking about is the sort of deeply technical stuff that in some ways used to be considered necessitous, but there are fewer and fewer people doing this. And the reason is because the people with the capability of it are rarer and rarer and very, very expensive to acquire. So to some extent, we place ourselves in our hands of our suppliers, our software suppliers, to make sure that the internals of the system work correctly and appropriately. We have a pretty good B&TES team and a pretty strong focus on the infrastructure that we have as a council. So again, there's some deeply technical audits could be done around that infrastructure, but again, they avail themselves sometimes of external assistance. They might get somebody in to do a stress test on a particularly critical group of functions within our infrastructure. So there is stuff goes on. It's just not done by internal audit in a structured way. Now, when previous auditors, external auditors, have actually offered to do computer audit work for the council. But again, I think they're struggling because we've seen very little of it in really the last 3 or 4 years. There's been scant reference to it. So it's something that auditors used to be concerned about and wring their hands about. And it's almost like we've now reached the point when we realise we can't do it as a routine thing. And that's the same for everybody. And we recognise that. It's just necessary for me to give you that statement that says we're not doing advanced computer work because it's not even having the resources, it's having the capacity to do it. And acquiring that capacity is very, very expensive. So, cyber attack, for instance, you can get testing, you can have external people test your resilience for cyber attacks and so on. That costs you a bit of money, but it's well worth doing. Our colleagues in BTS do that sort of thing from time to time and are very concerned about the major threats to our infrastructure. But within the payroll system, for instance, making sure everything connects up and works properly in computer terms probably isn't worth doing it because we would notice any oddities as part of our operations. So it's a kind of expensive thing to do, and it doesn't necessarily produce good results anymore. So, anyway, sorry, Chair, I think I've spoken enough about this.
No, thanks for that. In effect, it's things that, like you say, have moved on with a lot of this software. It's very much tried and tested, and you're right. Your internal audit process would highlight any anomalies in the outcomes from these things. Are you happy with that, Councillor?
Yes, Chair, I'm quite satisfied with that very full answer. I appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, if there's nobody else, we'll move on to the recommendations. So we're to note the internal audit charter and agree the internal audit plan. Are we happy to do that? There we go. Well, thank you very much. Any other business deemed urgent by the Chair for need to a decision and would not be notified of anything, so there's nothing else. Thank you all very much for your attendance. Thank you.